So that's page 1034, and we are looking at Luke chapter 6, verses 46 to 49. So this is the parable of the wise and foolish builders. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they're like. They are like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation on rock. When the flood came and the torrent struck that house but couldn't shake it because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete.
Great. Well, a very good morning to you again. I'm sorry you've got me for the next 45 minutes again. So when Chris had given me this passage to speak on this morning, I got really excited because for those of you that don't know, I work in construction and I'm a builder, and I've dug my fair few foundations. I've built a few houses, and I thought, great, this is in my wheelhouse. So in my preparation, I went on a deep dive into different methods of building houses and all that sort of stuff, and I thought we'd lay out some good building technology and school you all on how to get things done on a building site. And then I got a hold of myself and thought, actually, let's just have a look at what the passage says instead. So you'll be grateful of that, I'm sure. Dave, could you pop up the first slide, please? Who can tell me what this building is? It's the Empire State Building. Who's been to the Empire State by any chance? Excellent. Who's been there within the last few months? Oh, in the last year? Yeah, there you go. There's Mr. Faulkner and family. Did you go up? No, we didn't. You didn't go up? Okay, fine. You've been before, right, excellent. Does anybody know any facts about the Empire State Building? Big building in the middle of, in New York. Go on.
It's very tall.
It is very tall. It is very, very tall. Do you know how tall? No? It's 102 stories high, okay, 102 floors. It's 1,454 feet high. It's tall, okay? How long do you think it took to build? This is quite impressive, actually. It took 410 days, 12 days ahead of schedule, and way under budget. It was built in 1931. 1931. It weighs, the steel columns hold up 365,000 tons of steel and building. She's a big old girl. The foundations are 17 meters deep. That's 55 feet, okay? That's a lot of these. How much is this? Maybe about 7? So 3 or 4 times the height of this building, deep down. So there were 28,000 dump trucks worth of material that were dug out to get down to the bedrock. And the bedrock's the really solid stuff underneath all the kind of looser material. And that's what you need to get to when you build foundations. You need to get down to really, really solid stuff. It was dug mainly using jackhammers and shovels around the clock. One team after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next. So incredible, 1931. And then they've got this mast that shoots up right at the top. Does anybody know what that's for? Or what it was originally intended for? Wi-Fi. They were ahead of their time in 1931. Radio. Well, yeah, all those things may be true. So go on. Airships. That's quite right, Andy Bruce. It was originally there for docking airships. Yeah, and for various reasons, mainly health and safety related, that didn't really ever take off. No pun intended there. But yes, on average, it gets struck by lightning about 25 times a year. And it's weathered hundreds of storms, and it's still standing, and it's not going anywhere. They dug down really deep to the bedrock. They poured a load of concrete onto that to give a solid foundation, steel columns, and up they went. So, Empire State Building. Does anybody know what this next building is? And has anybody been there? Show of hands. Yeah, a few people. Excellent. Does anybody know anything interesting about the Leaning Tower of Pisa? Go on. Sorry, it's leaning? Yeah. Do you know how much? No, not quite 15. 12? 11? Go on. 11. No, not quite. Apparently, I mean, this is just my research, right? So you may be, go on. Yes. Yes, they did, absolutely. So it started to lean during construction, okay? So they knew it was on the lean, and they just kept going. They started construction in the 12th century, so a little while ago. Chris, were you? No. It took 177 years to complete, okay? So it was completed in the 14th centuries. In 1990, it had reached 5.5 degrees of tilt. And they thought a little bit later, actually, that's a little bit too much lean. So they corrected it to 3.97 degrees, because apparently that makes a difference. Don't know why. The reason it's leaning, it was built on bad ground. It was built on soft, bad ground. And it's not that they didn't know how to build stuff. I mean, look at it. It's beautifully made. Just the stuff in the ground was no good. So if you just flick onto the next slide, please, Dave. Does anybody know what this is? No, not the Vatican. It's in Florence. It's the Duomo, yes, which is an Italian word for cathedral in Italy. And this is in Florence, and I've been there a couple of times, and it is extraordinary. That dome bit that you can see on the top, that is the biggest masonry dome in the world. And masonry means that it's made out of bricks and concrete. So it's not made of timber. It's all bricks and mortar. And it's made with bricks laid in what's called a herringbone fashion, which is a zigzag. A lot of your paving on driveways and that sort of thing you'll see is in a zigzag. It's laid in a herringbone pattern. It was designed by a chap called Brunelleschi, which is just fun to say. And that dome alone weighs 40,000 tons. Okay, that's 200 jumbo jets, and used about 4 million bricks. So it's not that they didn't know how to build stuff, the Italians. They've done quite a good job. There's things all over the country that are quite extraordinary. It's that the Leaning Tower of Pisa just wasn't built on good ground. It just doesn't have good foundations, and it's leaning over. So let's just have a look then at chapter 6 here, and at verse 47. Let's read again. As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words, that's Jesus speaking, and puts them into practice, I will show you what they're like. They're like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid foundations on rock. Think New York, big skyscraper, dug down deep and built on rock, built foundations on rock. And when a flood came, the torrent struck that house, but could not shake it because it was well built. And the one who hears my words but does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed, and its destruction was complete. Quite heavy language there. Its destruction was complete. So we've got two builders, we've got two houses, we've got two torrents, and two outcomes. And I wonder what comes to mind when you hear the word torrent. Any thoughts? Just shout out. Torrent. What springs to mind? Flood. Yep. Rushing water. Power. Waterfalls. Absolutely. Dave, could you flick on again, please? This is me a few years ago. This is what it reminded me of. It's not quite a torrent. I didn't want to be in the torrent. We were staying, this is up in Northumberland, in the Cheviots, and we were staying in a lovely cottage in a farmhouse, and overnight it had clearly rained a touch, and the river that we'd crossed the day before had burst its banks, and water had just covered everything on this floodplain. So the water had filled the river, overspilled, and then all these fields around it were covered in water. And I'm actually standing on a road there that we use to access it. Dave, could you flick on another slide, please? This is the bridge that crossed the river. And you can see that's more torrent-like, the white water, the gushing up, welling up. The force of that just picks up trees and all sorts that are not well-rooted, and off they go. This bridge has good foundations. It stayed put, thankfully, and it didn't move. It wasn't washed away by the torrent. Could you flick on, Dave, please? So there you can get a better idea of the roads there on the left-hand side, and then the main rivers off to the right. Now, if you flick on, if you look at the hill in the background, okay, and then flick on one slide, you can see the hill there again. That's the next day. Gone. Torrent came, washed things away, and then the water receded. And there's me in my once blue truck, which I still miss. It was a great van. Anyway, there you go. There's a torrent, Water comes, washes things away. And those things that aren't rooted down, that don't have good foundations, don't stand up. Now, what's different in the outcomes of those two stories that we've just read about in Luke 6 there, and they are stories. It's a parable. It's a way that Jesus used to teach. He used stories to help us understand things. What made a difference to each of those houses that were built was not how long they took to build, whether it was centuries or just a couple of years. It wasn't how much money was spent building them. It wasn't how many bricks they used or how heavy it was, how impressive or ornate it was. The difference was the foundations. That's what really made the difference. They were dug down deep and laid on solid rock. Now, in verse 47, this is why it makes a difference. If you have a look down there, they listened to his words and he put them into practice. That's what led to good foundations being built, was listening to Jesus and what he had to say. Now, for those of you that are paying attention, you might see that I've skipped over verse 46. So we're just going to jump back to that, because I think this is quite important and actually kind of sets up why we should be listening to Jesus in the first place. So, Dave, if you could just flick on to that, please. So this is verse 46. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? Now, I don't know why it's repeated twice. Often that's a literary technique where it's used for emphasis. Things are repeated so that it draws our attention to it. And that may be the case. And if it is so, it's sort of well placed there because it's really highlighting the importance of these words, Lord, Lord. Now, in Greek, the word for Lord is, Dave, could you flick on, is Kyrie or Kyrios. And anybody who can speak better Greek than I can might be able to correct me on the pronunciation there. And that literal translation is, Dave, if you flick on, is Lord or Master or Ruler. Someone of a very high position or high standing. But actually, it's even more than that. The use of this word assigns things to it. This person has a divine authority. They identify as God themselves and as ruler over all creation. It's not just a name. It's a title. It's telling us who this person is and what their qualifications are. Now, it's a little bit like inviting an expert to come and help you out with the problem you've got. My neighbour's a heating engineer. He's a gas installer. Now, if I had trouble with my heating, or you did, and you didn't have any hot water or central heating, and you invited them to come and look at your boiler, and they said, I know the problem. Yep, you need to do this, this, and that. They're the expert. And you say, great, thank you so much, Tony. Pay your bill, and off you go, and you do nothing about it. And that's the sentiment of what Jesus is saying here, that I am qualified. In fact, this is how you are addressing me. Can you see that in verse 46? Why do you call me Lord, Lord? So they've identified who he is as the divine ruler over all creation. very nature of God himself. And yet you don't listen to what I say. It's like having an expert in your home trying to sort out your central heating, and you completely ignore what they do. It's madness. And the consequences of that, well, they're plain to see. That's why Jesus has gone about teaching us using this parable. He says, if you don't listen to me, look at the language there again at the end of verse 49. It leads to destruction. It leads to destruction. Why? Because storms are coming, and that's the other thing to note. There are storms. It's not if, it's when. When are these storms coming? And we all have storms in our own lives, and they all look different for us. They might be storms of loneliness or trouble in the family or illness. There are difficulties that come our ways. And the difference is about how we weather those storms, whether our foundations are deep and well-rooted in the Lord Jesus Christ. And so here, there are two builders, there are two houses, there are two torrents and two very different outcomes. And that's based really entirely on whether we're going to listen to what Jesus has to say, the most qualified, the divine ruler of all creation. When he speaks and he tells us how to live, how do we respond to that? Do we listen and put it into practice? There in verse 47, do we put them into practice and lay deep foundations? Or do we do our own thing? Now, I hope that for each of us here, we can hear from the word this morning, hear from the Bible, and that we'll take things to heart. And not just come to church and sing songs and hear something explained from the front and have a good cup of coffee, and as soon as we leave, cross over that threshold, forget it all, and just ignore it. I hope that we can listen and hear things from Jesus about how to live and take them to heart and put them into practice, because I think that can lead, as Jesus says here, to deep foundations that hold up, that stand up when storms come our way.